Welcome back again to the Imaginary Gallery. This is TJ, your host, and this particular video is kind of a continuation of the last one, which actually happens to be the first one in this brand new series of which discusses Sandra Brown's book, How to Spot a Dangerous Person Before You Get Involved. I just recall as I went through it in the last video how it would be like a reaction to it to expand further upon this, because this is not the first one in her list of 8 different types of dangerous people. It's not the first one. It's the first one I chose because it's the one that when I read this one, it was one of those moments where you're like, oh my goodness, I can't believe, because it like answers many of the questions I'd had through all these periods, thinking, what is going on here? How could this be? And it really helped to deal with that, which I believe is the purpose. But we'll go to the beginning where Sandra had mentioned that this particular category is the one that leaves most targets feeling the most duped and fooled. And I think this is my own view, but if you haven't met Hank the Hider before and you're living your life as a regular person, you don't normally expect to think that if you do happen to run across a person that you seem to have something in common with, or you chance upon becoming friends or hanging out together, we don't normally think that the person we're now meeting with is a Hank the Hider. I mean, that's like stuff for fantasies, for movies, for books we read, but not for real life. So when we do meet a Hank the Hider, many times we will try to create excuses in our own mind if things come up that indicate this person is not being real. Plus, they have the talent of effortlessly lying to you. So if you meet them, you hang out with them, you hear what they say about themselves, and then you see something that doesn't fit, if you go as far as to say, like, well, you told me that you really felt strongly about whatever, and then, but you've done this thing here that's like completely the opposite, what gives? Which is a natural reaction, and the person with the hidden life will usually have some kind of explanation. Oh, I am against all that stuff. Oh, those things, well, they were because of some specific circumstance that isn't regular, is what they want you to believe. But anyway, that's what I noticed with a lot of the hidden lifers I've known over the years. And as I've stated in many videos, you do notice discrepancies, but it doesn't do you any good to address them with the person, because they have an answer, a ready-made answer to excuse it away. So here you are in your own journey thinking, oh, I'm giving this person more of my time, but I can't help but notice discrepancies. And when you try to address them, you get that reaction. So you're like, oh. And then your brain is thinking, that was either a cover-up, or I need to be worried, or maybe I'm just imagining things. That's gaslighting, by the way. But yes, when she talks about the complicated histories with these people, there are no easy answers. Well, on countless occasions over the years, it's like everything in this chapter was like hitting home, like, how does she know? Oh, because I would meet several people who, friends, dates, whatever, it doesn't matter, they would give me their histories about various aspects of their previous life, and I have some natural tendency to pick up on things like the inconsistency, and would be like, wait a second. And I would just like I wouldn't be like thinking you're wrong, I'm going to catch you. It's just I'm trying to make sense of this. You had said this, but then you had said that. Well, what do you mean? Because I was naive. But yes, quite a few of these I've met do have the fictitious histories. And if you think of it in the mirroring manner of this person's mirroring me, that's why their stories sound the way they do. And you can sometimes tell that it's like this is someone who doesn't know what it's like to have the views I do, but they're trying to make it look like they do, and they fail because you know what it's like to be a certain way, and then when you hear somebody claiming to be that same way, but they're doing things that don't fit, some of us will be like, this is fishy. But then again, we also, if we express this, will be gaslighted to be quiet because we're just letting our imaginations run wild. But I have met a few where these individuals do tell their history. They tell you what they've done, and if you start seeing them more, it's normal to ask, so, who am I with now? Well, tell me about your past, and they will. But like in my case, I would, on several occasions, several different monsters would hear their stories, and usually I didn't even care. I was just listening, and for the sake of continuity, listening and thinking, okay, okay. And then there'd be discrepancy. I'd be like, wait a second, though. And I would question things. And every time, I'd be assured, oh, well, that's wrong. Actually, it was this way or that way. And I think that's one of the reasons why some of us that actually have the intuition that tells us something's off, we learn to silence that voice inside our head, or we learn to work around it. Because if you go to the person you're suspecting of foul play and you say, hey, I can't help but realize you said this about this, but then you've done that, I don't think you're real, well, they're going to be like, oh, no, 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 and they'll have some explanation, and you'll want to believe it. So a lot of times we squelch our own thoughts of, this person's full of it, and then they tell you some story, and then we want to believe that after we've spent several nights with them, to be like, oh, okay, good, I was wrong. And we learn to distrust our own internal powers or abilities that I think that many of us do have, but have silenced because of such things. And as far as dealing with these people with hidden lives, it's kind of a trip to go through because it's not something you'd expect, especially if you're young and naive and think you found this great person to live with or whatever the case may be. It's just something you would never want to believe that this person actually is a completely different person from what you see. I try to think of it as like when I'm in grade school and I see adults, and then I go to junior high and high, do I ever think, I can't wait. One day I want to grow up and find a person I think is the person of my dreams, and later learn it's completely the opposite. No, nobody goes through with a thought of that or a dream of that, but then when you find yourself in it, compared to what your real fantasy life would be of, I hope I someday find someone for this, and then someone who's compatible and likes me and whatever, and I like, you find yourself dealing with a hidden lifer, and it's like, this is not what I ever would sign on for. But when I read Sandra talking about how these people with the hidden lives do not really truly feel connected to other people, it makes a lot of sense. Because a lot of questions come up when dealing with such a person, as like, how could someone say all those things they had said that I felt so close to them for, and then actually do this? And it's because they do not feel connected to other people. They see people as objects to get things from. So if you give your personal story about how perhaps maybe your last partner didn't care about you at all and just used you for A and B and C, these hidden lifers at first, if they're trying to reel you in, will be like, oh, well, I could never do that. And you'll think, oh, that's exactly what I want to hear. But then later you find out it's exactly how they feel too, but they won't say it. So it's just difficult with the hidden life person. And when you distance yourself from the circumstances and realize, like, this person is seeing me as a prey. This is a predator that wants something from me. And when you look at it that way, it kind of makes a little more sense, because really that's what they're doing. They won't say that. Like, even I've noticed, it doesn't do any good to say it. Like, are you sure you're not just seeing me because you want to use me to take in front of your family to show you've got the same person each holiday each year? I mean, things like that do not work. It'll be, oh, that's silly, you made that up. No, I just like you. And like, but the point is, I've come up with such hunches that actually turned out to be 1,000% accurate. But I've learned you can't confront the monster doing it and expect a real answer. And that ties in with many of us believe if we live a certain way, and we believe in general it's a good thing to say what you really feel about things, we sometimes make the mistake of assuming others are the same way. And when you come across a hidden lifer, you think you can like talk your way through it, but you can't, because they're on a completely different program than you are. Their program is get whatever you want, lie to get it, do not tell the truth. If confronted, never admit you're lying. If someone accuses you of playing the game that you're playing, never admit that you're in a game. And it's like a whole different rule system. And if you're not used to that, then you won't even, I mean, you might in the back of your mind think that could be it, but think, well, certainly this human being couldn't be that evil. But believe it, many of them are. A lot of times they're quiet. They don't say a lot. And of course, I say way too much. So if I'm with one for the evening and I say it all and say it all 100 times, and then think when the night's over, that person probably got sick of hearing what I was saying, the next day, I want to see you again. It's like, what? You do? So I'm thinking that, oh, this person thinks I'm okay, even though I said all that. Okay. And so I'll say more and more and more, and of course the other person will say very little, and I'll think, well, it wants to hang out again, so I guess I'm doing okay, because I'm not usually out with someone thinking, okay, what am I going to say to appear to be this way or that? It's just whatever comes to mind comes out. And if it's good, great, and if it's not, I would expect to be told, I don't think we should talk anymore for a while or something. I would expect. In fact, sometimes I even push it. It's like I'll bring up things that probably shouldn't be brought up just to see. And many of these people that turn out to be hidden lifers will be like, oh no, I had no problem. It's like, you probably didn't like to hear my discussion last night about this. And they'll be, oh no, I liked it. So they're letting me in further, or you in further. It's just interesting, though, because they don't tend to talk a lot. They listen, and then when they do talk, it kind of sometimes sounds like their stories are like rewrites of mine, and that's kind of scary to go through, which I have on a few occasions with a few different people. In fact, it got to the point where I could kind of like pick up on it, but then again, there's always that element that it's just a feeling you have that this person's telling me this story, which strangely resembles a story I had told that was real about somebody else, and this doesn't feel right. But again, you can't really prove anything, and you can't really expect to say, I think that you've made that up, because you'll look like you're retarded, because you don't know what they did or didn't. You can't see it, and that's what works for them. That's one of their favorite modus operandis, is to tell you something that you'll never get to see, ever. There's no video of it. There's no footage of it live anywhere. So they rewrite their past to fit the situation. So clearly the person with the hidden life kind of resonates with me due to my circumstances, and just so many of them are involved in it. When I was scanning back over this particular chapter about all the various factors that could be playing here, especially when it's somebody who's kind of, like she says, tight-lipped. They don't say a lot, so you really don't have a lot to go on, because the more they say, the more you can figure out. And with these people, a lot of times they're just like the best listeners. So then you feel more inclined to tell more and more and more, thinking that the more you tell and the more they want to see you, they're being drawn into you. But that's not it at all. They are simply keeping quiet and making you feel more comfortable, because you think, wow, I can't believe I told this person that story that was not even flattering, and still wants to see me tomorrow? And I would test it sometimes, like, this is a really nasty story. Hey, and I would like tell it, and that really builds your confidence up to think that, wow, I told him that diarrhea at Barnes and Noble story, and he still wants to see me tomorrow too. Wow, and it's all part of the phony game, which that was taken from Mean Girls, the Barnes and Noble, but yes, you'll like test them to think this can't be real. Let's test it. Hey, I had to go to diarrhea at Barnes and Noble, and da da da. And you expect at some point for them maybe to say, oh, that's gross, and then leave, but they don't, because they have their own evil agenda. So it doesn't matter it could be, oh, I did accidentally murder 10 people the other night, and they'll be like, oh, that's okay. So it's a scam. And I've brought in the entitlement subject when you finally see what you're dealing with, because clearly you are in a specific compartment when you're dealing with the person with a hidden life. And you're in that compartment, yet you're aware of things that go on outside of it, or that could go on outside of it, yet you're constantly told that, oh no, those things aren't going out. But then you discover one or two and think, well, but these things are going on outside of this compartment. And these hidden lifers always have some kind of excuse to cover it up, because they want to control the image that you have of them. So if you start on your own to notice this and notice that and piece together your own little theories, they'll be like, oh, you've made all that up in your head. Can't you just accept I like you, which is fake? So again, tip, if you come across that with somebody, don't think that challenging or trying to debate with them will work, because it really doesn't. Believe it. Believe me, I've tried on numerous occasions. I would like write out a huge outline, like it's as clear as day for anybody to understand the discrepancies, and say, okay, let's have this discussion. And the same result always occurs, which is nothing gets resolved, nothing gets discussed in a genuine manner, and the finger gets pointed at me, and or I'm told, oh, well, I'm sorry, you're so perfect, and you have to do this to feel better. Wrong. Another aspect of the hidden life person is that you feel like you're like opening up your entire existence to such a person, yet when you're apart, you start to think like, wow, I don't really feel like I know too much at all about the other person. And the things you do know contradict one another. So a lot of times you'll be like, of course, flattered that this person wants to spend all this time with you, at the same time thinking, wait a minute, this is not even. You know everything about me now. What's going on with you? And you don't always know, because they don't really tell a lot. And if you push it and say, hey, well, tell me about your stuff, they a lot of times will be silent, like, well, I don't have anything to tell, or because they don't want you to know the truth, and they can give you some phony stories here and there, but clearly they're limited as far as the number of stories they have. And a lot of times we want to believe the illusion, so we can push and push and try, and when there's no answer, think, oh, okay, well, hopefully later I'll get the answer. But These people are counting on you not really knowing what's going on. And of course, they do all their gestures that indicate they really like you. So you sometimes question yourself, like, should I keep pushing for this? Maybe this is just the type of person that doesn't talk as much as I do. And this is all mind control. It's all abuse. It's all manipulation, because the bits and pieces you come up with later do indicate there is, in fact, something going on with the other person, but clearly that other person has no interest in sharing that with you. And it comes down to the fact that he or she believes that he or she is entitled to having the cake, the cock, and eating it too. And they don't think it's anyone else's business what they're doing. And when I read that, I thought, oh my goodness, how many people have I known that these lines fit perfectly with? For example, someone you've been with regularly for the longest time, and then discover that some secret shenanigans have been going on with some other person, like throughout this period, and you suspected it, but were told you were wrong, and then find out it was true, and then you get mad, like, I suspected that. How could you have done that and told me I was wrong? They don't think you need to know what they're doing. Yet they also claim, oh, I'm in love with you and you only. And it's just confusing and cognitive dissonance, because most of us would think, well, if you feel that strongly for me, then there's no excuse at all for you to have done whatever this other thing is with this other person that you were determined that I would never find out about. But again, this is all ADHD running here and there based on reading a few of her words. But I think they're valid points as far as how this works, because a lot of times we do, if we don't know any better, we think, well, maybe I am being too assertive or aggressive about this. Maybe I should just believe this, because a lot of the hidden lifers I've noticed, they're empty. They're shallow. Because one thing I've said to at least two of them, I would say, hey, how come you can never sit down and just pick a subject and elaborate on it for an extended period of time? It could be anything. It doesn't even have to be related to us. Just like I say about debates. These people cannot or will not debate. Well, they cannot sit there and elaborate on something and give like constantly valid information that makes sense or indicates they're actually thinking about it. And yet I could sit there and say, look, here's what I think about that new policy, and go on and on and on about it and give the good sides, the bad sides, and the mixed sides and everything. But I had a few of these I'd be involved with, hoping I wasn't involved with a monster, saying, how come you can't really elaborate on something you feel strongly about? And the answers I would get, well, that's not my personality. I'm just not like that. But you must have an opinion, but doesn't always work. But that's a clue, a red flag for you. You got somebody who's willing to listen to every word you have to say, but doesn't have any type of proof that they really feel strongly for or against something or a subject. They could be a person with a hidden life, and you're basically threatening their fictitious mask by asking these questions, so their answers are very superficial and shallow. So look out for that. The moment I started investigating, of course, if you've done the same thing, the reactions you get from the dangerous person will always be something on the order of, oh, you've made all that up in your head, which we call gaslighting, when you didn't. In fact, if you were telling a story about another person you're suspicious of and gave your person all the details, you can be assured that your person would be like, oh yes, something is going on. That really means this is going on because of that and this. But then when that same spotlight's turned on to the person you're talking with, it's a whole different story that, oh, you've made all that up. Oh, that's all wrong. Which, again, is a form of abuse, because you're just using your intuition and your facts to come to conclusions. But the last part here, or in conclusion, she has the section on why these people are successful. And I understand what she's talking about because I've known people like that, like I kind of touched on before, where they don't say a lot, but they seem to be engaged there with you. So even if you're talking about crazy subjects that many people might think is sick or sickening, they're still right there with you and want to be with you the next day. So you kind of feel like, wow, this person's tolerant of different viewpoints. But the problem is that can draw us to them further because personally, privately, they're probably thinking to themselves, oh, I can't wait till this evening's over. I just want to get his bank account. Oh, or something. But you'll never know that. Even if you say, are you sure you're not just with me for my bank account? You'll be told you're silly. So you can't expect to get the truth from such a person. But she says, Sandra says, that these people are not stupid. They know what kinds of things push people's buttons and run them off, which I believe is true. So even if you suspect something based on what you've seen or perceived, if you try to push further, the hidden lifer knows that to expand upon what you're asking about will not do any good for their scam. So you'll be told, oh no, you're wrong. Oh no, that's not the way it worked. Oh, you misunderstood. I agree with her statement about. I also found it interesting about in the who they seek section, which she has on each personality type, by the way. She had said that the number one enemy of the hidden lifer is an inquiring mind, followed by persistent questions. Well, see, there have been a few of these that I've met that at first I didn't really care, just like she says, that I was the perfect target because I didn't care. And it's like, you can do whatever you want. I'm not going to marry anybody. And their number one enemy, though, the one they don't want, though, is someone who does question things, who does follow up on things, who does check things out. And I was not any of those things usually, with a few of these, a handful, we can say. But the problem is when things become more regular and inconsistencies appear, well, that changes. And that's when we come across where we actually start paying attention to things and following up with, well, wait a minute, you said this, but then that? They don't like that, but I guess because in my case I wasn't like that at first, I was fair game because I didn't question anything. I didn't care. I might joke or kid, but I wasn't really caring about or concerned. So that explains to me personally as far as how I could have gone so far with such people. But yes, if you're like that at the very beginning, they'll probably not want to see you again if you're like questioning everything and looking for confirmation and the validation of your thoughts of everything going on. You'll be history and never see the person again. But that was another part I noticed that was funny because they don't understand what the big deal is about what they do because they have that compartmentalization. See, I'd never worked well with that because when I look at a person who tells me this is who I am, period, well then I expect that to be who they are, period. I don't expect for it the truth to be this is who I am, period, when I'm talking with you. But when I'm not talking with you, I'm 30 other people. That's just not what I'm expecting. But yes, I was quite an enemy to a few of these because even though I wasn't at first, I later became the type that questioned and checked up on things because I wasn't going to be gaslighted. If I suspected this and suspected that based on A, B, and C, and D, I would check it out, maybe even covertly But they're gone, so I guess it was successful. Get rid of yours now.
So, which one is the real me? Is it me?
Do you hear me? Do you care? I told you I ain't gonna shapeshift. You can try
Would
all
you
you want,
please
but it ain't
stop
gonna
telling
work.
people
Because
that
I
I'm a
got my own
lesbian?
together.
That was a phase, and it is ruining my future. So, keep your mouth shut or I'm gonna
the
shoot you.
narcopath. I just got out of the shower. Imagine seeing a life-size replica of yourself in the middle of a ring with a bunch of famous, well-respected people torturing and raping you. I needed some more pills to stand that. So luckily, the queen, who's got my baby, she reminded me of exactly what I'm doing. And I feel much better now. Look out.